Welcome Pastor Jeremy as he comes to bring the word today.
All right. Good morning. I find it interesting working on a message, trying to talk about something that you've experienced in your life, and yet when you're working on it, you start experiencing it again. Kind of amplifies everything else going on in your life. It's a unique experience. A couple of weeks ago, talked about God trials. Well, today, we're going to continue on. And we're going to get a little word today, a lot more word, a little less preaching, a lot more word. And so today is going to be Trial Games 2. Trial Games 2. Now I got notes everywhere, so you're just going to have to bear with me as we go through this, because apparently we're needing this. Sometimes we as individuals or groups or any area of your life, but just you individually, can hit a challenging time in life that will shake you down to the very core of who you are and who you are not. You learn things in certain challenges of life. So we're going to go ahead and start off in James chapter 1. We're going to start with verse 2. This is what we covered last time, but I'm going to go through it again because it says, "Hey brother, count it all joy when you fall into various trials." Now, I kept getting hung up on this fall into thing because knowing how I am and how good I was not at walking faith out, I fail all the time. So when I read a scripture and I'm seeing something like when you fall into, that's because I'm doing something stupid. And I've done a lot of stupid things that made me fall into some bad things that were really hard to get out of. But I don't necessarily know if that's what that means. Sometimes I believe that when you fall into something and then you're supposed to count it joy because it's going to test your faith, to grow your patience. Sometimes I wonder if the Lord sets things in your path for you to fall into. A trial, which, as we learned last time, a trial is you're going to be observed of how you handle it. You're being watched. It's a little hard to swallow, because when you're in a trial, we don't act our best, do we? Because we're in a trial. You ever been around some people when they under a lot of stress and pressure and they're going through something they don't understand and they just are not healthy to be around? Toxic, like woo! So sometimes when you fall into various trials, it's like playing Pitfall from the 1980s. You know, it's just a tootie you run and there's a pit, you fall into it. But you're supposed to count it joy, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work. So you're going to be complete and lacking nothing, which is what we want. That's what I want. I want to feel like no matter what I got in my life, I don't want to feel like I'm lacking anything. I don't want to feel like I'm missing anything. But see, this is where the fight comes in the trial. This is where the fight comes. And this is such a difficult text, so let me continue reading. So once this happens, what's next? Let him ask for wisdom. So apparently when you're in a trial, we don't really know what's going on. It's a trial and we're not sure. We're confused and we don't know what's going on. So he says, ask for wisdom, consciously hold fast, ask in faith. Well, that's a toughie. With no doubting. Ha ha ha. Ha ha. So you want me to ask in faith while I'm getting squeezed in a trial and things ain't going real good and I'm not supposed to doubt it. Right. Because why? Because the one that doubts is the one who is like the wave of a sea, who is driven and tossed by the wind. Because that person must not suppose that he received. Let me rephrase that. For that person shouldn't expect to receive anything from the Lord. Because he's a double-minded man. And he's unstable in all his ways. Been there. That happens quite frequently sometimes. But listen, that scripture seems a little heavy-handed to me. It's kind of weighty. How am I supposed to do that? Let me tell you what he just said. Let me sum it up. He says, if you're confused, ask me. But don't doubt. Because if you doubt, then you shouldn't expect anything from me because you're double-minded. That's basically what he just said. Now, there's two prayers in this text. Let me point them out to you. Prayer number one is grant me wisdom. I want everybody to say, grant me wisdom. Grant me wisdom. The second prayer is to increase my faith. So technically, we're needing to kill our doubts. That's what we're needing. Now, the good news is that in the place where we're fighting doubt, the spot where we're like, you know, I believe, but you're going to have to help my unbelief in this situation. This spot where you're going, you know, I believe, but I'm struggling. I'm struggling to hang on to this belief. Well, this is where God steps in. But you have to be honest with yourself to get in this position and to be postured this way. And this is when the Lord steps in, and that little mustard seed of faith puts the Lord to work in our lives. Because the day is coming that you're going to have to wrestle with your flesh and get to the place where trials do not wear you down to the point that it weakens you to where you're constantly wrestling with doubt. And something else, just because you're wrestling with doubt, doesn't mean you have to feel guilty or have to feel shame about it either. You shouldn't have to, because it is a fight and it is a trial. Now Jesus is like, well, what do you mean if I can? Okay? Because I can do anything through someone who believes, and that's what he's trying to let us know. Help my unbelief. That's what we want. I believe, but you're going to have to help me when I'm wavering. See, we all have to fight, but God honors the fight. But we all know, like the double-minded man, see, the double-minded man's like, oh man, baby, he's not going to help me out with this. He's not going to help me. I mean, you're not even crying out to God for help because you don't believe he's going to help you. That's the double-minded mentality. You know, giving lip service to God is pretending to be all put together when you're really not. And I mean, if you're honest, I mean, what does your testimony really look like? What does it look like? Yeah, well, I'm doing great. I'm really nailing it. My home's a train wreck, but really we're fine. Your life is engulfed in terrible flames, but yet you seem to act like you've got it all put together. No, I'm good. Don't worry about it. We'll get this fire put out. No worries. Stop. Listen, you got to stop pretending at some point. You've got to learn how to cry out to God. Quit your lip service, and you're going to have to say, Lord, man, I'm a mess. I am a mess. My family is a mess. My kids are a mess. I'm locked down. I wake up, I go to work, I come home, I eat dinner. I do my chores, I watch a little TV, scroll on my phone, just to get up and do it all over again the very next day. Anger is swelled up all around. We never talk. And when we do, it quickly turns into a fight. Anger is swelled. Nagging begins to take place. Brawling begins to rise into the air. Cursing starts coming forth. Doors are slamming, leaving mad, squealing out of the driveway and going to bed engulfed with anger and a lump on my chest. And I'm depressed. And I'm rejected, disconnected, offended, and I'm jealous of all of those around that seem to have it all together. Is that your testimony? You know, here's another one that we have to fight in the midst of a trial. We're going to look at verse 9 through 12. Check this out. Let the lowly brother, boast in his exaltation, and the rich in his humiliation. Because like a flower of the field, he will pass away. For the sun rises with the scorching heat, and it weathers the grass. Its flowers fall, and its beauty perishes. So also the rich man fade away in the midst of his pursuit. Now listen to the switch to the other fella. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. For when he has withstood the test, he will receive the crown of life. Now look, I don't know, every time, I have went over this 50 times, and every time I see these three words, crown of life, I feel something inside me. I'm like, I don't know the magnitude of what that means, but I like it, and I want it. That's all I know. I'm going to say it again, okay, just because I want to hear those three words. Check this out. When he has withstood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. Now here's the second fight. This one like to took me out. The fight of comparison. You ever noticed all the TV shows and movies that you're watching, and it appears as though everybody's relationships and everybody's marriages and their children are all great and they got money and they got all that good stuff? Here you are with your marriage half shut down, living two separate lives. Children ain't got no respect for you. And you're watching all of this. And you find that there's this resentment that starts building up on the inside of you. And it's causing you to compare to others. Comparing to what you see others and how they seem to you. And it's causing you to reflect on your situation in your life. Because it seems like things will never change, and you're comparing your life with other people's life and with Hollywood. And you're thinking to yourself, God, are you serious? Are you serious? Look at my life. Look at the shape that I'm in. And look at these people acting like they got it all together. Looks as though they do. And I'm miserable. Well, let me tell you something. Hollywood doesn't tell the truth. And you don't need to compare yourself to where somebody else is in their life. You are your own individual person with the Lord. Don't compare yourself to others. I remember a dark time in my life that I couldn't even look ahead and dream of tomorrow, because all I could see was loss and pain, and I couldn't even dream anymore. My heart was full of fear, and it was dark. And I remember being upset when I'd see that other people who appeared to be doing pretty good, and they seemed to be getting things and getting promoted and getting all kinds of stuff added to their life, it looked like they was doing pretty good, and like they was growing in some kind of way and getting gifted and blessed and things happening in their life. And I was thinking to myself, God, are you serious? I am so miserable. And we're trying so hard. And it doesn't look like I've gotten anywhere. And for some reason, I thought that the Lord had hinged so much on me. I mean, you have to be really kind of careful when you're walking these things out with the Lord, because the devil will absolutely take your relationship with the Lord and twist it into making you believe that if you don't walk this out just right, you ain't going to make it. And neither will the people you love. And puts a weight on you that's too hard to carry. Because the fact of the matter is, nothing was hinged on me. The world would have went on without me. And would have been just fine. See, when we're enduring trials, we become more intensely aware of the prettiness of other people's lives. And it begins to develop a resentment. Even though you don't want to, it develops. And James, what James is telling us, he's like, no, wait, no, dude, you got to stop. It's all level ground. Everybody endures trials. Everybody struggles. The Lord says, look, I'm trying to lead you into maturity. And I'm showing you that you need me. And in the middle of this, we're going to need to be encouraged. So verse 13 is here. Yay! Let's look at it. Let no one say when he is tempted that I am being tempted by God, because God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is leeward or wavering and enticed by his own desire. I hate this part. This is one of my most hated scriptures in the whole Bible. Every time I read it, I got the crown of life pumping me up, and then I get right here, and it's like, because it says, when you get weakened, you become enticed by your desires. Ugh. I hate them desires when they flare up when you're all weak. You know what I'm talking about? Because when the desire is conceived, it births sin. Oh, God, no. No, don't let that happen. Why? Because when sin is fully grown, it brings forth death. But the fact is, we need to view trials as a path to maturity. Okay? It's a path to maturity. And we need to understand trials make us consciously aware that we need God. We need Him bad. You have to get to this place where you know you need Him. Actually, He's the only thing that we do need. And that we're going to have to duke it out with doubt. It's going to be a real fight. Like the heavyweight champion of the world. Ding, 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 ding. Ladies and gentlemen, in the blue corner, weighing 465 pounds, the master of disaster, the divider of relationships, Mr. Doubt. You like that, baby? Well, I had to break it up a little bit. It's kind of tense in here. We really do have to duke it out with doubt. I hate doubt. Oh my gosh. It's like once it starts kind of tapping on your shoulder a little bit about a specific area. There's an area that maybe you're being tried in a little bit. And it's like, it's going, and you're like, And you're like, and so you kind of look, somebody taps you on the shoulder, what do? Well, that's what happens with doubt. It's like he taps you on the shoulder and you're like, look, and you look and you're like, oh crap. And you start doubting. What? That's what happens. And now you're tinkering with a little bit of doubt about that money you spent, or, maybe a decision that you made, or, doubt shows up. Well, you wasn't dealing with it a while ago, but now all of a sudden you're dealing with it. Well, here's doubt. And doubt, once you start exercising it a little bit and entertaining it, like I do, because I'm an idiot, I try to fight him and see who can win. Well, you know what happens? It's a tag team match. Because you know what? He goes over when I get enough doubt built up and I'm like, oh yeah, he goes and tag teams his brother Fear. Next thing I know, I'm fearing where I was doubting. And now I'm living in fear and doubt. And here's the nasty thing about it. Where did I go? I did that off my notes. Here's the nasty thing about fear and doubt. Even though there was one specific area that you may be being tried in when he tapped you on the shoulder, if you wrestle it out for too long and let him get a handle on you, he starts trickling into other areas of your life. Now you're dealing with fear and doubt in areas that you weren't dealing with any fear and doubt in because it spreads. It's like a spirit, you know. Spirit of fear, the spirit of doubt. It spreads into other areas, and now you're doubting everything about yourself. Comparison can slip into you during these times. Because when you're doubting, you start examining and reflecting. So what do? You compare yourself with somebody else or with what you see on TV. And you can't do that. It contaminates you. It's not for you to compare yourself to them. And what ends up happening is that tempts you to be drawn away, to wrestle with your flesh and with these things, and it betrays God's invitation to maturity. And you don't end up getting what you need. And that leads to death. It leads to you giving up. So hang in there. He's got you. Don't compare when you're going through a trial. And it's in this moment that James does what he needs to do to turn our eyes to the nature and character of God, not others. Don't compare. He tries to turn our eyes to the character of God. Verse 16, he says, now look, don't be deceived, my beloved brother. Don't be deceived. Don't be fooled. And he moves on to this beautiful reminder in verse 17. We're coming down the wire, okay? Hang in there with me. Verse 17, that everything good and perfect has come down from the Father of lights. Everything good. Everything that's good and perfect comes down from the Father of lights. You know, a great anchor for your soul is your knowledge of the goodness and the grace of God. And if you have this knowledge, you are way more likely to be filled with gratitude in the midst of the storm and in the midst of adversity in your fight. If God is for you, who could be against you? If He's for you. Now, the other thing that we see in what we just read is that there is no variation. There's no change in Him. There's no change in God's view of you. See, God knew what He was buying on the cross. He knew what He was getting with you and me. He knew what He was getting. I was a handful. And He's not going to change His mind. He's not watching you and watching how you're going through this and thinking to Himself, do I have to keep him? Do I have to keep him? Oh my gosh, he's making a mess of things. Do I got to keep her? She is so hard to handle. Nobody can handle her. See, there is no return policy. He doesn't do that. He knew all of your shortcomings, and He's imparted a future grace to you. And if you think that for whatever reason that you disgust God because of your trials and your hard times, let me tell you something. The only disgust that God has for you was poured out with His death on that cross over 2,000 years ago. There is no disgust towards you. Even if you feel like you're unstable, feeling constantly tossed about, do you really think that bothers God? Just look to the cross. You know, one of the ways I knew how much my wife loved me when we were going through so many trials didn't have anything to do with how good she was doing and how perfect she was. It was her willingness to continue to fight through the struggles because of me. Showed me how much she loved me. Not by what was going good, because of how she fought through things that were going bad. Was a demonstration of love. See, the reason Paul can say in Romans chapter 8 that there is no condemnation. No condemnation. Do you know, I used to think condemnation was the voice of the Lord. I did. I love the Lord so much, I just felt like it was His way of letting me know that I'm not doing well. I opened myself up to condemnation and lived a life of it. Constantly with a voice of condemnation speaking over me in my own heart and mind. But there is no condemnation. I don't know why I didn't know the difference. I just didn't know. I was a pretty pathetic person, so I was like, well, He's telling me the truth. But there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ. It's because the debt's been paid in full. Lord, I'm so terrible. Just look to the cross. Because you are that terrible. All that was due or will ever be due has already been paid in full. And He said, it is finished. The last verse, verse 18, the very last one, we're going to close this out. 30 seconds. Of His own will, He brought us forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits. If you wrestle the thought that God is disgusted with you and you're always falling short and you can't believe and you're wrestling with doubt, the fight with doubt and comparison, it's a real thing and it's a real struggle. But James wants to remind us of this. God chose you. So it was God's idea. It was of His own will that He called you to Himself. See, God looks out into the future, and He sees you. And He wanted to make you part of His family. I'm going to call him my own. I'm going to call her into my own family. And I'm going to give them all of the riches of my glory. Because He chose you. So rest. Rest.